a runaway girl who accidentally stabbed her father, a temperamental and tone-deaf transgender woman, a drunken homeless man who steals offerings from graves. These three strange individuals form an even stranger group, each one saving and redeeming the other in their own way. On this day, it's Christmas, people in the church are singing hymns, and the priest is on stage preaching about the birth of Jesus, intended to bring salvation to the homeless. A transgender woman named Hannah is praying devoutly, her hands clasped in prayer. The homeless man Jin is sleeping soundly beside her. His only goal is to get some free food after the event ends. After receiving the aid, they find a runaway girl named Miyuki. Together, the three of them look like an odd little family, but in reality, they are just three fallen leaves from their respective families, blown by chance to land in the same place in this city. Anna is a transgender woman, although she has a man's body. She believes herself to be a woman. The man beside her, Jin, claims he used to be a race car driver, but after his daughter passed away from a severe illness, his wife left him, and he fell into a life of alcoholism and homelessness. Though Hannah is a transgender woman, she always dreams of having her own child. Jin often mocks her for this, but Hannah believes that if the Virgin Mary could give birth to Jesus, then a miracle could happen to her too. At that moment, they suddenly hear a baby crying. In a garbage pile, they find an abandoned baby girl. Next to her, a birth certificate and a storage locker key. Miyuki and Jin argue to take the baby to the police station, since they're both starving and can't afford to take care of the baby. But Hannah disagrees. Having once been abandoned herself, she decides to take the baby and find her parents. She wants to know what kind of circumstances would make parents cruel enough to abandon their own child. So, the three of them, with this baby girl they found on Christmas, set off on a journey to find her parents. Anna names the baby Kiyoko. When Jin hears the name, his expression turns complex. It seems there was once a woman named Kiyoko in his life too. In a shabby shelter at the park, the three homeless people awkwardly change Kiyoko's diaper and feed her. When she finally stops crying, the whole world seems to quiet down. Her soft little face seems to bring a touch of color into their otherwise dull lives. The next day, they open the storage locker with the key. Inside, they find various items, a stack of bar business cards and a few tied-up photographs. The man and woman in the photos must be Kiyoko's parents. Using their last bit of money, they buy train tickets to visit the bar listed on the business cards, hoping to find Kiyoko's parents. However, the other passengers on the train wrinkle their noses in disgust at the smell of the trio. But then, due to heavy snow, the train is forced to stop. In the opposite carriage, Miyuki spots her father. She immediately jumps off the train and runs away, but in the chaos, she loses the baby supplies she had packed. Jin and Hannah follow after her. They decide to walk to the bar. Anna, ever optimistic, suggests they sing together to lift their spirits. Her positivity keeps the group going, but soon she grows weak from hunger. They reach a nearby cemetery, where they find offerings left on the graves. Although they find some food, there's nothing that a baby can eat. Jin decides again to take the baby to the police, because they are just three homeless men who can barely feed themselves. They simply can't care for the baby. But as they argue over this, they suddenly notice a grave with baby supplies placed in front of it. Baby formula, diapers, everything. Anna is overjoyed. She feels Kiyoko must be under God's protection. With the supplies, they continue on their way. Passing by a black luxury car, they notice a man trapped under the car. They struggle to lift the car and rescue him. The man, grateful for their help, hands them his business card. Only then do they realize he's the local mob boss Ota. Anna shows him a business card from the bar and asks if he knows the place. Coincidentally, the bar is owned by Ota's son-in-law Mitsuo, and today is the wedding of Ota's daughter. He invites the three of them to the celebration. Through Ota, they find Mitsuo. Mitsuo recognizes the woman in the photograph. Her name is Sachiko. She borrowed a lot of money from him, all at high interest. At this moment, Jin recognizes Mitsuo as the man who once tricked him into gambling. Jin's earlier story was a lie. He wasn't a race car driver at all, but a man who abandoned his wife and daughter because of his gambling debts. In a fit of rage, Jin grabs a bottle to confront Mitsuo, but suddenly, a gunshot rings out, and a hitman bursts into the room. The scene descends into chaos. Amid the confusion, the hitman kidnaps Miyuki and Kiyoko. taking them as hostages and fleeing in a car. Jin and Hana give chase, but they can't catch up with the speeding car. Miyuki and the baby are taken. Jin completely gives up. He feels he's done everything he could, and now it's up to the police. Anna curses at him, saying he'll end up dead in the streets. The two part ways. Anna decides to search for Miyuki and Kiyoko alone, while Jin continues to drink on the street. Suddenly, he spots an old man lying nearby. Jin turns him over, and in that moment, he seems to see an image of himself in his old age. Jin carried the old man back to his place. The old man lay on the bed, constantly sipping from his bottle. When he finished his last sip, he contentedly told Jin that his dream was to die drunk in bed. Then, he handed Jin a red cloth pouch and peacefully passed away. At the old man's place, Jin found a poster. The building on the poster looked identical to the one in the background of Kiyoko's parents' photo. This reigned his determination. He decided to go find Kiyoko, but just as he stepped outside, he ran into some punks who enjoyed bullying homeless people. Jin was beaten badly by them, and they stole the envelope from his arms. He chased after them, struggling to get the envelope back, but by the time he retrieved it, his head was bleeding and his body was battered. Meanwhile, Miyuki had been brought back to the killer's home. He didn't seem like a bad person. His wife even helped take care of Kiyoko. The killer's family was foreign. Miyuki couldn't understand them, but with simple hand gestures and photos, she managed to communicate. Miyuki took out a picture of her family and began telling the killer's wife about her past. Back then, her father was always busy with work and had no time for her. So, she made the little cat her best friend, but her father threw the cat away. In a fit of rage, Miyuki stabbed her father, who was a policeman. She felt like she had done something unforgivable, which is why she had never dared to face him again. Just then, Miyuki heard Hana calling from outside the window. The three of them were finally reunited. When Kiyoko was back in Hana's arms, she stopped crying. It was as though Hana's embrace gave her comfort. Miyuki asked Hana where Jin was. Hana, angry, said he was dead. But when she heard of a homeless man passing away nearby, she immediately rushed over to check. Luckily, the man who died wasn't Jin. The two of them were left homeless with nowhere to go. Anna remembered a bar where she used to work. There was a kind-hearted friend of his, their mama, who was also a good-hearted trans woman. The bar was still lively, but in the corner, there was a homeless man covered in wounds. Anna took a closer look and realized it was Jin. It turned out that Jin had been badly injured by the punks when he tried to get the envelope back. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, a staff member from a bar rescued him. At the bar, Anna and Mama reminisced about the past. Anna once had a husband, but he accidentally died in the bathroom. Since then, Anna's life had completely changed. She had once been the star singer at the bar, but because a customer called him a smelly man, Anna became enraged and hit him. After that, Anna was cast out onto the streets. The next morning, the three of them set out again to find Kiyoko's parents. They went through many hardships, but in the end they found the building from the photo. But it had already become a ruin. They asked the neighbors about the couple. It turns out the couple had disappeared after owing a huge sum of money. The neighbors didn't know where they went. Fortunately, Anna found a new address for them in an old calendar. At the same time, Miyuki saw a missing person ad placed by her father. The ad said her cat had returned home, and her father hoped that she would come home soon. Miyuki hesitated but finally dialed the number at home. But as soon as she heard her father's voice, she quickly hung up. Even though her father had forgiven her, she still couldn't forgive herself. Meanwhile, Anna and Jin were chatting at a convenience store. Jin pulled out the envelope he had fought for with his life. Inside were the money he had saved for his daughter. Even though he was now a homeless man, he still hoped that someday, when he met his daughter, he would be able to do something for her. Suddenly, a drunken man came in and told them to leave. A scuffle broke out in the snowy streets. During the altercation, an ambulance suddenly lost control and crashed into the street. While everyone was in a daze, Anna collapsed onto the ground. At the hospital, a nurse came over to inquire about the child Miyuki was holding. When the nurse learned that the child's name was Kiyoko, she was surprised to say that her own name was also Kiyoko. The doctor diagnosed Hana with simply malnutrition. Jin helplessly remarked that this was the fate of a homeless person. To pay for the hospital bills, Jin reluctantly handed over the money he had saved for his daughter. But when Jin saw the nurse named Kiyoko, he frowned. It turned out that this Kiyoko was his daughter. Jin kept apologizing for abandoning her all those years ago, but Kiyoko didn't seem to care about that. She simply spoke to him with longing, asking about his health and well-being. Kiyoko told him that she and her mother had been searching for him, even going so far as to identify an unknown male corpse. They knew that Jin had made mistakes, but they also knew he needed a family. After saying this, Kiyoko handed him a key, hoping that one day he could return home. Just then, the usually understanding Hana suddenly lashed out at Jin, calling him a liar and complaining about his smell. Anna even accused Jin of constantly dragging her down. After saying this, she grabbed Miyuki and left. In fact, Anna said all this deliberately. She believed Jin should have his own home. She also hoped that Miyuki could return to her family and live a happy and fulfilling life. But Hana had never considered what would happen to her afterward. At that moment, a news report came on the TV about a kidnapped baby at the hospital. Jin realized that the baby being talked about was Kiyoko. Meanwhile, Anna decided to take the child back to the police station, but just as they turned around, they spotted a woman trying to jump into the river to take her own life. They quickly pulled her back to safety. To their surprise, this woman was Kiyoko's mother, Sachiko. Anna scolded her for abandoning her child. Sachiko tearfully explained that her husband had taken the child away while she wasn't looking. Anna, moved by her sorrowful appearance, chose to believe her and returned Kiyoko to her, urging her to take on the responsibility of being a true mother. Later, Anna and Miyuki said their final goodbyes to Kiyoko, nearly collapsing in tears in the snow-covered streets. Meanwhile, Jin had found Sachiko's house, but from her husband, he learned a shocking secret. It turned out that Sachiko wasn't Kiyoko's real mother. After her own child had a miscarriage, Sachiko had stolen Kiyoko from the hospital. Her husband, fearing the truth would come out, had secretly abandoned Kiyoko in a trash heap. Upon hearing this, Jin immediately rushed back to inform Anna and told her the whole truth. So, the three of them immediately began searching the city. Finally, they found Sachiko in a park. Sachiko grabbed the child and ran. Desperation, she stole a delivery truck and drove away. Jin, realizing this was his chance, chased after her on his bicycle, fulfilling his dream of becoming a racer. Anna and Miyuki hailed a taxi and followed closely behind. In the end, under Jin's interference, the truck lost control and crashed into a building. Sachiko, clutching Kiyoko, fled to the rooftop. Unable to catch the elevator, Miyuki ran up the stairs. This time, she took off her coat and threw away her hat. She had always wrapped herself tightly in her coat to protect herself from being hurt. But now she realized that to protect others, she needed to shed these heavy burdens. Her efforts now would decide Kiyoko's future. Under the helicopter's searchlights and Miyuki's pursuit, Sachiko found herself at the very edge of the rooftop. At that moment, Sachiko completely broke down. She confessed the truth about stealing the child. It turned out that she couldn't accept the death of her own child, so she transferred her twisted motherly love onto someone else's child. But she never considered that stealing another's child could break a family apart. Now, all she wanted was to escape from this tragic fate. Just as she was about to jump, her husband's voice from across the building shouted desperately, begging her to live. Miyuki shouted that Kiyoko's real mother also wanted to see her child. These words snapped Sachiko back to her senses. But as she was about to hand Kiyoko over to Miyuki, she accidentally dropped the child. Seeing this, Anna threw caution to the wind and rushed forward. At that moment, a miraculous gust of wind blew, allowing both Hana and the child to land safely on the ground. In the end, after a night of adventure, Kiyoko was well protected by everyone and safely returned to her parents. The story's conclusion: the three heroes Saturday talking in the hospital room, and coincidentally, the police officer investigating the case turned out to be Miyuki's father. Father and daughter were finally reunited. Thus, this Christmas adventure story involving many people came to an end. The three homeless individuals had all been avoiding their families for different reasons. But Kiyoko, like an angel, brought them luck and healing. She reunited Jin with his daughter, and helped him understand his responsibilities as a father and husband. She made Miyuki realize the difficulties of being a parent, and she allowed Anna, who had always wanted to be a mother, to fulfill her dream of becoming one. The story also teaches us a valuable lesson. No matter what mistakes you've made in the past, your family will always love and forgive you, and also believe that somewhere in this world, There will always be someone willing to light a lamp for you and wait for you to come home.